is up, YouTube? JankyYGO here. My name is Michael, and in this video, I'm going over this new archetype. I could have read them a few days ago, or they came out a few days ago, or spoiled a few days actually do. But instead of going over and reading all the cards to you and saying my initial impression, I'm going to tell you what I think about them after playing this pure version of the deck, and tell you overall what I think, because I actually found out quite a lot from just playing this. Now, this version probably isn't very good, and it's literally I just threw of everything in the deck, and just said to figure out what is where after that. So, um, here's the good news and the bad news of this. The good news is that it kind of is um doesn't really know what it wants to do. I kind of talked about that when in my initial impression of this deck is that it doesn't know what it quite wants to do. Does it want to go first or does it want to go second? However, um that's not too much of an issue because it does have plays for going both, doing both. Now, what's important is out of the three monsters, because there's only three main deck monsters, all of them are very important, and all of them do something different. Um, the whole theme of this deck is that you're supposed to equip your monsters with equip spells and then crash into your opponent's monsters and make them take the battle damage. That's kind of the idea. And normally battle-centric archetypes aren't very good, but this isn't just a battle-centric archetype. It does have other plays, and that's what makes it a little bit different from something like Amazonas or Warrock. The good news is it can be very disruptive. If you go first, in certain scenarios, you can disrupt your opponent in a pure sprite matchup. For example, if you open up the water one right here, because it says during your opponent's turn, while this is equipped with an equip card, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls, and you take control of it till the end of the turn. In against certain sprite hands, if you take their first normal summon, you can just shut them out of the game. In certain sprite matchups and hands, and they have an equipped spell that is sort of like Snatch Steal that Snatch Steals it as long as you control one. So if you have this water one and you have that, and you have this trap card right here, which lets you equip a face-up monster with an appropriate equip spell from your deck, you can disrupt a sprite play even if they have something like Starter. There are ways for them to play out of this, but that is a very cool thing that you can do, and that's something I found out while playing this deck. However, the downside of this deck is that while you can disrupt your opponent, you can take all their cards and stuff like that, and you can kind of beat them down that way. It doesn't actually have a good way of closing out the game, since your whole point is to attack into your opponent's monsters and stuff like that. Or at least in this version of the deck, that's a more pure version, it doesn't have a good way to close out the game. And going second, your deck actually does have pretty good board breakers, but the issue becomes like, and this is something that's going to happen with this deck, is the thing about this deck is that it can send things to the graveyard pretty easily, but the problem with it is that it needs more card names or better equipped spells. Because the three we got are very powerful, but they actually still don't do quite enough or and stuff like that, which is kind of weird to say considering got this one, which is a premature burial or summons from hand, as long as but it only is for the archetype. This one, which lets you bounce an opponent's monster as long as you bounce one of yours as well. And then this is the Snatch Steal that you can't activate the effects. But the thing is that like when you go into that and everything, you can be quite disruptive. But the issue is that like if you shut down a play like by taking their monsters, for example, you can link them away and stuff like that for the extra deck, which my extra deck isn't really built to do that. Unfortunately, I just kind of threw these in for pot of extravagance instead of prosperity. Prosperity is a better card. Extravagance budget, so I chose extravagance. But the thing is that like the issue is mainly that this deck doesn't have a good way to push for game, and you can make the argument that the ritual can help you do that, because the ritual spell card is very, very powerful, because it allows you to, after you ritual summon, you can destroy cards your opponent controls up to the number of equipped spells with different names in the graveyard, and then inflict 1,000 for each card. So because there's 3 equipped spells in this deck and stuff like that at this current time for this archetype, get like 3,000 damage and pop 3 cards, and that can be really, really powerful. But that's my initial impression of this deck, is that there kind of just needs to be more equip spell names. The monsters actually, uh, even though there's only 3, it's pretty fine. If you open up the ritual has a hand effect where you reveal it, and then you can add any of the archetype to your hand, and then you discard a card. So if you just open up this, it can get you to Nini Mir if you're going first, and if you're going second, it's probably better to get Har the sword. So because Har like gets you more equipped spells and stuff like that, and lets you kind of play more. Har is also a warrior, so that you can get it with Rhoda, and there's probably other ways to get her as well that I just didn't throw in the deck. However, let's talk about something I haven't addressed. They do have a way to not only, like, this is their ritual. You can summon it with a ritual spell, but they also have a quick play spell that lets you get it out as well. And while it returns during your opponent's end phase, that's perfectly fine. And it has a graveyard effect that you can use immediately as well to send one of the archetype card for the. Not only does it summon from the hand, it also is a foolish burial. In my experience playing with this card, though, there actually hasn't been much that I want that second effect for, because the equip spells kind of come back from the grave with the help of the traps, so you can send the traps to do that. You can use this card to get kind of both of your monsters out for your low level ones, for example. That can also help, because if you normal summon Hair, for example, or you special summon Hair with this card, for example, then you banish it and summon out Nini. Then if you equip Purifying Dance, which is the best one to start out with, on the Hair, you can search out Blazing Dance, activate it, and get Nini, so that you have both of your monsters out. And then if you have Catfight, Catfight's really, really good for this deck. Catfight is even more important than Promise. Promise lets you summon any from your hand or deck, and that's super powerful, except for the rich, because it doesn't stay ignoring so many conditions. But it lets you summon any of the low level ones from your hand or deck, which is important, because you get to, and then you get equipped an equipped spell from your hand or graveyard to it that, works. The downside is that, honestly, a lot of the time, at least in my experience, Catfight has been better. Catfight equipping any of them from your deck or monster, or to sometimes your opponent's monster, to steal it with Rondo, fighting Rondo. So yeah, those are the main points. Is like the ideal opening hand is Nini, um, Purifying Dance. So the ideal hand is this, 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 and then any other cards really after this, because yeah, in in a more competitive build, because like I said, this is just build was just to test the deck's power on its own. In a more competitive build, you would play stuff like Ash Blossom and like hand traps. So, for example, you could have these 3 cards and then like 2 hand traps, and then you'd be perfectly set, because that's kind of what the deck probably wants to do if you're going first. So, yeah, very, very cool deck for sure. It doesn't have a lot of pushing power and stuff like that. And I haven't talked about the field spell yet. The field spell, we'll hover over it. Field spell is quite interesting, as it makes your opponent attack equipped monsters and that is important since, so that they force it to battle them, and they can't activate cards or effects during the damage step as well. It also lets you send an equip spell you control to the graveyard to make that monster attack again. So if your monster attacks, then equip and attack again. And this can work. You can send it with, for example, your you can send the equip spell that stole their monster, and then when the equip spell leaves this one, you send that monster to the graveyard. So not only are you getting rid of it and attacking again into something really like big and possibly winning the game, you're also taking out a monster that you took as well that probably has already attacked if you're doing this correctly. So the field spell isn't bad. It's not like it's a search and everything like that like a lot of field spells are. It's still pretty good for the deck in my honest opinion though. This needs more equip spells, and I don't know what equip spells they could give this deck because the 3 that they gave them are all super powerful, and anything that changes attack and defense is not really what this deck wants. So, because if your monsters have 0 attack, 0 defense, so the the monster loses 500 attack. You don't want something like that in the deck because your monsters can't lose any more attack. So there's no point to it. And you don't want your opponent's monsters to lose attack because um they they take less damage. And for the opposite sign, for gaining, let's say, 500 attack, you don't want your monsters gaining 500 attack because that means your opponents your opponents are gonna take less damage overall, and you don't want and you can give your opponents 500 attack, sure, but that's not very impactful as like their monster is. So yeah, my initial like thing of this deck is I think it just needs more support. I think it's missing uh some more equip spells, maybe some more main deck monsters, like a way to search um something other than equip spells. I know that they have one that searches any card in the ritual, one that searches equip spells, maybe one that searches the traps or the monsters in particular would help. Maybe more rituals for monsters, I don't know. But the thing is that like we definitely need more of the equip spells. And yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. You can tell me what you think of the Mikanko deck down below in the comment section. If it is your birthday today, happy birthday. And if you want to send me any cool deck profiles or replays, you can send them to JankyYGO at gmail.com. And of course, and as always, have a wonderful day.